Hello. Thought I'd do an update on New Zealand during COVID again, since there's been some developments this week. Most notable development for me is it doesn't really affect me much anymore. Sure, I don't have a job as yet. Whether or not I would be in the same position employment-wise had this not all happened, actually I wouldn't, because one of the jobs I was interviewing for is no longer available because the person who was leaving to Ireland is not any longer. So that's the only real impact on me at the moment. Can get takeaway food, but also happy cooking at home. Managed to move cities. Have now been able to extend my bubble, so socially feeling pretty okay. And for fitness I go running. Swimming's now allowed as well, but it's a bit cold for that. Morning. Not not really hugely impactful for me at the moment, but nonetheless we are starting a sort of phased move into level 2. So 11:59 tonight, Wednesday, will be the first sort of wave of the transition, and then which is basically shops can open. Monday next week school is back, schools are open, and then I think in 2 weeks they're going to review sort of gathering sizes and things like that. At the moment I think it's 100, so maximum of 100 people in your restaurant. Quite interesting. So you're allowed funerals and weddings and whatnot, but any events, which I don't know if that includes, letting people in your shop, any form of gathering, I think it is capped at 2 hours. Come on, buddy. Which, I thought was quite an interesting thing. I'm less well researched today because been busy with other things and caring a bit less because it's impacting me a bit less. But I think New Zealand's had 21 deaths in total, so really hasn't been increasing much. We, for the longest time, have had it's basically 3 or less new cases a day, and actually lots of days have had 0 new cases, which is awesome. And I did have and 95% of all cases have recovered. I think there are a couple of people in hospital at the moment, but not in intensive care. So New Zealand's looking really good. There's been lots of stuff in social media about New Zealand patting its own back, and there has been lots of sort of the rest of the world congratulating us as well. Not that we're the only country who's done really awesome. Although I think there was one of the countries who had done really well, had seen a resurgence. I think it might have been South Korea. Yesterday I did also look at some of the global, I just glanced at some graphs. So US is the leader in, I think, cases and deaths, and basically their daily new cases still seems to be on the increase. And of the other top players of the most cases, so I think it's UK, Italy, France, Germany, their daily cases looks to have peaked and be stabilising. However, they're not sort of, New Zealand sort of went up to the peak and then plunged down to nothing relatively quickly, whereas these countries is sort of, it's flattening and staying consistent in the thousands. So, which I really believe that's the difference between a lockdown, a full lockdown, and not a lockdown. Politics is just becoming more and more prominent, which sucks, but that's life. And I mean, there's a whole heap of people who have had their lives disrupted and are angry and are wanting someone to be angry at. So it's a lot easier to be angry at the government than at a virus. So that's a shame, but really good one the other day was someone said, basically saying how Prime Minister's never run a business and doesn't understand business. And a nurse commented on the defending Facebook post, it said, dead people are bad for business. I think she understands that. And it's so good. Morning. So, yeah, it's, I mean, you're always going to have people on both sides. It's just a shame that it is going to turn into a big political mess. But at least, even if the current government, have martyred themselves, it was a worthy cause. So with the economy, they're sort of expecting 3 waves of redundancies. The first one was initially when we went into lockdown, businesses who couldn't survive using the wage subsidy made people redundant. Or the second wave, I think, is going to be after the wage subsidy runs out. So that's on a 12-week sort of ticking time bomb. And once that runs out, there'll be another wave of redundancies and probably business closures. And then the third hit will be in about 6 months. They reckon around Christmas, I think, where businesses struggle for a long period of time and just can't quite recover. So I generally take the optimistic view, and I'm feeling very optimistic at the moment. My KiwiSaver actually increased this month. There's a heap of economic activity opening up from tonight, so we're heading in the right direction, and I think probably I won't feel it as much because I've got a lot of savings that I worked bloody hard for, and my partner's got an income, decent income, so I certainly won't be one of the hard hit people, which I think is saying something given that I am unemployed. So yeah, you kind of need a bunch of things to line up to be badly hit, and that'd be if you're in tourism, possibly not so much because they're able to open partly. If you don't have any savings to tide you over, and you don't have a partner with an income, and yeah, there will definitely be people like that out there. But the silver lining is that there'll be lots of people who will. There'll be a bunch of people unaffected. There'll be a bunch of people, supermarkets, who will do better from it. There'll be people who are a little bit affected, like me, and then there are the people who are really affected. So yeah, it will be very interesting to see where we're at around Christmas time. And I think those are kind of the main. I wanted to quickly. So we moved house from Auckland to Christchurch, and so Ro flew. The airport apparently was super quiet and empty, but nothing. There wasn't anything hugely special about flying in COVID New Zealand, but I drove all the way down, so I have a few interesting little tidbits. One is that there were heaps of cops, compared to everywhere else, heaps of cops in the lower half of the North Island, out on the roads. So that's kind of like from National Park below. And there was one police checkpoint in Fielding where they were asking people where they were going, which basically was a conversation. I didn't have to sort of show any paperwork or anything. Lots, compared to the rest of the country, lots of people, just civilians out driving their cars around in the South Island. Lots more than anywhere else. The ferry was pretty quiet, lots of people and cars and lots of commercial vehicles, but not really many walk-ons at all, and just generally not many people on the ferry. And yeah, so those were the main sort of interesting points of the journey. I stayed at an Airbnb in Wellington, and that just worked as it would have in any other situation, although I had to wait 90 minutes for my Hal Pizza delivery, which seems really long, but anyhow. Yeah, so it's quite interesting. And the public toilet in Kaikoura was shut. I was actually pretty happy with the availability of public toilets along the drive, but yes, the Kaikoura one was a big bummer that wasn't available. Yeah, so that's my update for now. Will be interesting to see how things go moving into level 2. I think just the happiness of the country will drastically increase, because you kind of forget what normal's like, and this looks a lot like normal. So yeah, that should be really good. Fingers crossed I can get a job.